Hello, BookTube. I can't promise that I'll always be able to get you a little video like this, but I think everybody needs landscape therapy, so I'll try to do it as often as I can. So this is another coffee break, and we're going to talk today about books that we do not finish, or in BookTube language, that's DNF. Now, I haven't got some kind of cure. I don't have a one-size-fits-all solution, but I do have some thoughts as I've been watching videos about DNF from other booktubers. Thoughts have occurred to me, I've been writing them down, and I think now I've got a few useful meditations. You might find them helpful, and even if only one person gets something they can take away, well, that's worth a 10-minute video, absolutely. I'm going to shut up now, though. Give you another few lovely seconds of peace and quiet and water. Okay, welcome back. BookTube, welcome inside. Now we can look at today's topic. This is going to be my thoughts on whether it is better to DNS, that is, do not start a book, rather than do not finish a book. Okay, but before I start, I think I need to lay my cards down on the table. It is rare for me to give up on a book. In fact, it's so rare, I can't think of an example for this video. But I do reject a lot of books. I reject them before I get to the library checkout desk. I reject them before I get to the cash register at a bookstore. So I guess you could say I DNF really early, okay? Maybe we could look at it like that. But look, everybody out there in BookTube world, I mean, you guys read a whole lot of books. Indulge me in this little imaginative exercise. Just imagine, what would you do if every few years all the minutes that you spent reading books that you ended up not finishing, what if all that time could be given back to you on one condition? And that one condition is all that time has to be spent reading one new book. And if that new book ends up also being a DNF, then that's it. The time is lost forever. Right? If you had that fantastic little bit of magic going on in your life, how would you choose the new book to make sure that that one wasn't a DNF, so that you got all your lost time back? Well, that's the 4 points I want to make, because this is the criteria that I apply to my reading to ensure that if I've picked a book to read, I get through that book. Point number 1, do not pressure yourself to read books in quantity. Oh wow, sorry BookTube, you're going to hate me. It really distresses me to see the pressure that BookTube inadvertently puts on everybody by all these huge TBR lists. I'm not saying they're not possible. Some people are going to make them, but I do question what they're really getting out of those, and I do question whether they're healthy for most people, and if they're not just counterproductive for reading in the end. That's just my take on it. But I mean, consider all the life factors that make reading difficult, right? If you have children, if you're looking after any kind of dependence, if you're not well, if you lose sleep or have a personal crisis, or you have to start or change new medications to get used to them, all those things are going to make it really tough to read. So I say, if you want to be a reader, and you know, with all the things that life might throw at you, just lower the amount that you read. In really bad times, take it down to like a page a day. Seriously, 10 minutes. Don't go over that. Don't ask yourself for any more than that. And feel totally free and unworried about rereading. You know, this is I really want to go into lingering over a book. We don't talk about it as a wonderful thing, but it is a wonderful thing to take a book and to really Go back and just check the language again. What words were used? How were they used? What does that sentence sound like if I read it out loud? We don't make enough of that. Nobody promotes lingering over a book because we're all so busy pushing, get through all these books in a year. It's like, no, forget it. Do something different. Really take time with the book. And then my second point, which makes me get through books, is be really picky about what book you choose. And that means you decide whether this is the time for you to read something that is short and something that is familiar or that you're comfortable with, rather than taking on something that is unfamiliar and weightier, right? Is this maybe the time for a graphic novel or a manga? Or is this the time for an audiobook, right? Because you've got ears that aren't busy, but your eyes have got other stuff that they need to be doing, like driving. Or is this the time that you get out an old book that you've read before, that you loved? Is this the time for a reread? Again, like I talked about lingering. Lingering is not a flaw, right? Rereading a book is not, worse than reading a brand new book. But there will always come a time when you want to try something unfamiliar and maybe it's a little weightier. So how do you choose those? Well, what I do is I really, really check to see what the critical opinion is of those books. And I don't really mean YouTube. I tend to look for what I would call professional criticism. And also I choose books that have stood the test of time. That's why I'm unlikely to read brand new books. I don't mean that you have to go all the way back to Charles Dickens. Some people aren't crazy about 19th century novels, and that's fine, because that's a whole different type of reading in itself. If you're following all the new releases, you might not know about something that came out in 1998 that's still a fantastic book. But it might be worth looking to see, what were the best sellers in those years. That's what I do. Check, what was really selling in a particular year, and then go find that. Okay, so point 3, commit to the book. I know, sounds crazy, right? I mean, when people DNF, the phrase that you hear most often is, oh, life's too short. Yeah, life is short. Can't really argue with that. But committing is a form of exercise. We don't have a downer on people if they commit to some kind of exercise regimen, no matter what it is. We say, oh yeah, good for you, good to have that commitment, because that'll benefit you in the long run. Well, so will mental commitments and intellectual commitments. So committing to a book and seeing it through, even though it's not easy, right? Just like an exercise program, yeah? Just like physical training, mental training benefits. So it is sometimes really good, once you've done all the picking of the book and you've decided how fast you can read it, realistically speaking, then you commit. And I know people love strong, healthy bodies, but people don't really get excited about strong, healthy minds. Well, they're a good thing to have too. Point 4, drop your expectations, right? We have a publishing industry that seeks to make sure that we're hooked and pulled in and entertained constantly, and we get used to that. And then we start reaching for a book and going and thinking that every book will do the same thing, but not every book is gonna, and not every book should. So I say, if you're reaching for the new book, or if you make that choice and you're picking up something unknown and you're going into new territory, have a discovery mind on, not an expectation mind on, right? You are gonna go into new territory, you're gonna seek things out and explore and see what is there, not ask this new place to give you what other places always have. Humans didn't evolve because they just set boundaries and then stayed inside them, even though boundaries are wonderful things and you sometimes need them. But when you decide to step out and cross into new territory, that's the time that you are more experimental, you're more adaptable, and you're willing to push yourself a bit. Don't treat books like consumer products. You just get through one and more and more and more, and you just want to keep consuming. I know that's how they're marketed, but that's not really what they are. I probably have to talk about that more in another video. Treat a book the way you treat meeting a new person, right? Give the book some time to show you what it really is in full. So that's my 4 points. I hope you found that really useful for today's coffee break. I have just finished my Gore Vidal book, so we will be talking about the outrageous, undefinable novel that is Myra Breckenridge. And I got to try and make some sense out of it, because wow, it's an interesting little book, but there's enough good stuff in it, so I will bring that to you next time. So bye bye for now, BookTube. Look forward to seeing you again soon.